Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, Medlock1 on the Twitters, coming to you Friday morning after the Cardinals. They were supposed to play Kansas City, Alan, but I'm not sure they ever made it across the state.
No, it's one of those situations yesterday, to make this into a personal story. You finally have all this enthusiasm from a great week. You had caught the College World Series, which has been great. You rolled into Cardinals baseball at night. They played well. You kind of had the trap series in Minnesota, but you come in, win 2 or 3 against San Diego, and you're thinking, all right, this is awesome. Well, then yesterday, you have no afternoon baseball. So you're waiting around and you're thinking, okay, Cardinals get the spotlight, and then you have the second inning and your enthusiasm is waned and they get out of a bases loaded situation. So yesterday was pretty terrible. One of those situations as a sports fan. But yeah, it was awful. That everything was gap to gap or over the fence and hit hard, and kind of a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, it was rough when Stephen Carey pointed out that the Royals hadn't had a runner on first base yet, and it was like 7-2 at that time. They didn't get a single until the 4th or 5th inning, I think, maybe later than that. So many doubles, so many in the gaps, and I don't know what the answer is. We've obviously, there's a lot of angst around Matthew Liberatore and Kyle Leahy to some degree. It really feels like the club is going to give them, all the rope they need, with the idea that there's going to be rough days, and sometimes you just got to deal with that so you can get better. How much is that going to help the team in the long run, or is this a situation where maybe they're just postponing the inevitable?
Well, that's a great point. And then my flip question turns into, if this is a season of opportunities, when do those opportunities come in the rotation too? Mm-hmm. I thought about that. A lot last night. I am a Liberatore guy, but I'm slowly losing a little bit of confidence in him becoming the front line, because I felt like there was a part last year and a part this year where I was like, his stuff really, really plays. The curveball really plays. But there's been a lot of hard contact. So I don't know how predictable that the movement is at this point, and that's concerning. The pitching's the one thing that we were worried about, is if they were going to stay in this. I mean, are they going to be able to get people out? And, you just kind of wonder if, I don't expect there to be any additions any major league additions at a deadline type deal if they're in the wild card hunt, because it kind of goes against what we've been told, and that's not really what I want to see either. That turns into the knee jerk that forced some of this problem. Period. But I do wonder, and I don't know, and I'm literally just asking this and kind of wondering on my own: are there AAA starters that could be close to ready to getting one of those? They've extended it to a 6-man rotation at one point this year. Is there going to be any relief on, how you could label it and sell it as, hey, pushing against an inning limit, for the long-term health of this, of the rotation, we're going to fit in a guy here and there. And I do wonder if we start to see some of that type scenario, but I don't know if there's going to be a lose faith, take them out of the rotation type scenario.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm pulled up Liberatore's career numbers, and again, ERA didn't tell you anything. Oh, it doesn't tell you everything. Let's put it that way. It does tell you some things, but his ERA, you know, 5 seasons counting this one, 5.97, 5.25, 4.40, 4.21, 4.71. So, I mean, he's never had it really click. I mean, he's had games here and there like everybody
Yeah.
does, but at most, right, you know, just looking at that. And again, some of that's in relief, a lot of that's in relief, right? I mean, it's hard to really say this is apples and oranges. So I'm not saying that we should draw a conclusion. I'm just trying to draw some broad strokes here.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's there's an argument that best case scenario for Matthew Liberatore is a back of the rotation pitcher, which can be valuable. There's no doubt about it. You can use those kind of guys, um, but yeah, when you've got a guy like Hunter Dobbins who has pitched pretty well, that's a few times he's been in the major leagues. When you have Quinn Matthews who isn't quite ready, but it's getting a lot closer. I feel like you got those two guys that, and you wonder where they would be if Richard Fitz was available, how much that would, maybe change the
Yes.
equation. I think you've got a good point there with the 6-man rotation that maybe after the All-Star break, that's what you see is, Dobbins comes up on the regular and they say, yeah, innings limits for Liberatore, not so much. He went 150 last year, so he could probably get to the 175, 180 this year
Yeah.
without too much trouble. But Leahy was a reliever last year, and maybe that's where they, if things struggle. And obviously Leahy pitched pretty well against the Padres, but if things continue to struggle for him, maybe that's where they they say, okay, well, we're going to shift him to the bullpen, or we're going to have a piggybacks, rotation type thing. I don't know, but I imagine they'll do some limitations there. But it is frustrating to sit and watch, your momentum go like that. And we haven't seen, I mean, you have to look at the game log, but it feels like if we've seen a good game and of any length out of Matthew Liberatore this year, it's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I was trying to think of the last one that was just kind of the lockdown situation, which it's been more than a month. But yeah, I mean, if you pick notable starts this year, I don't know if he's had a single one of them.
Looking at his game log, he went the 5 1/3 against the Cubs the day after Blogger Day, and he gave up no runs. He went 6 against the Padres back at the beginning of May, back out in San Diego, 6 innings, 1 run. And then he had a game against the Mets same way back at the beginning of April. He's had a scattered, it's kind of like scattered showers at this time of year. He's had scattered good
Yeah.
starts. But he's had, outings of 4, 4, 5, 4, 4, 5, 4. I mean, 4 or 5 runs. And that didn't even show last night's stats aren't updated on this on Baseball Reference yet, so they're not in there. So I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we're supposed to love. I think it would be easier to live with the growing pains, as it were. I mean, one, if he had better stuff, but two, if he was Max Ragic, a guy that we hadn't seen for 5 years, right? I think there's a little bit of familiarity of this guy's never going to be it. Whereas if he was coming up now doing this, we'd say give him some time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, this is second full season as a starter, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and yeah. I don't know. It kind of goes into that. When is he gonna? I don't know. I mean, it seems like even when we have these conversations after a game like that, it's an overreaction. But you're right. I mean,
Sure.
the track record says it all. It's one of those to where you're like, when did we get to know Nolan Gorman go down and go back to school? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, are we closer to that? Because I really don't know what the next move is, and him being out of the rotation is one that just kind of would surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They really have committed to him. So I think I would be a little bit surprised if they moved him to the bullpen or anything like that,
Yeah.
unless something really weird happened. Um, I don't know. If he had, and again, you're right. It is I'm an overreaction. He had a terrible start last night. And we've seen that out of a lot of people. We've seen that out of veterans like Sonny Gray last year would have starts like this.
Yes.
Liberatore does have one more option, so he could go back down. But I don't know. It just really feels to me like this is a thing they're going to ride the whole year, and they're going to
Yes.
evaluate at the end of the year if he's better than he was at the beginning of the year, and then use that going forward. I mean, he's still got he's getting right there, the arbitration eligible. They'll. I mean, I don't think that Matthew Liberatore. I think Matthew Liberatore is going to be a Cardinal for a while. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. No, agreed. And I didn't want to indicate that either. It's one of those that I think it's easy just to question what will be the pitching move that now that we've seen offensively that they're willing to move some parts if things get drastically worse or stay on this on this trajectory where we can't get anybody out and there's a lot of hard contact and you can't get more than 5 outs in a game, what that move would be under this regime in the rotation, whether that's going to be adding the 6th man, which I would think, and then start working the innings angle, or knee jerk and say, hey, listen, we're going to give you a couple starts off. You're going to work out the pin, this and this and this. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that goes. And and we may not even know that for a while. It may just be take the lumps.
Yeah. And I mean, last night notwithstanding, Liberatore can usually go 4 to 5 innings.
Yeah.
Which again, you'd much rather Dustin May than going 9 or whatever. But, that's, in this day and age is not great. And I think somebody had a point on Twitter last night, and I've forgotten who it was, and I apologize, but somebody pointed out the Cardinals really, it may have been our old friend Rusty Groppel, actually. Somebody that need to separate Leahy and Liberatore in the rotation.
Yes.
That, you run the risk of burning your bullpen so much that you can't use them for the rest of the series or for another couple of days. Now, obviously, it worked out yesterday. Leahy was fine, and Sandy went 6 innings against the Padres, so it wasn't an issue this time around. But we have seen those two guys a lot go 4 or 4 1/3 or whatever the case may be, where you don't have that as much with. You definitely don't have that with May or McGreevy, really, and Palante hasn't had that kind of issue lately either. So, even if you gave Liberatore an extra day next time and try to shift things around a little bit, or maybe they will out of coming out of the All-Star break, which is coming up. It feels like that would be a smart move if you're going to keep everybody in the rotation.
Yeah, all of this is intriguing. You're just like, let's see the moves that are made, and I remember that the tweet from last night that said that, and I was like, that does make a lot of sense. I mean, especially in a situation that they're in right now. This is we go in the weeds a little bit, but in a situation where don't you feel like you may have to expect a let down maybe in the next May start?
Well, he's not going to go 9 innings and give up 1 hit. There's no doubt about that. But
no, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Would you be surprised if he gives up 4 runs in 3 innings?
I mean, I get what you're saying. I would be a little bit surprised just to how well he has pitched over the last, since those first couple of starts. Could he give up, 4 runs in 6 innings? Yeah, sure. That I believe. He's at maybe not. He's going up against the Royals on Sunday, so maybe it won't be so bad. But who knows? I mean, obviously we've seen the Royals have an ability to put runs on the board.
They scored 14 last night.
Yeah, exactly. I would be. Yeah, obviously there's going to be some sort of letdown. And he's going to have some of those, even if it's not this start, it's going to be coming up.
Yeah.
Where there's just going to be a bad start because that's the way pitching is.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you look at Liberatore's pull up his Baseball Savant page, and there's nothing red on it. I mean, there's a lot of bad numbers on there. And I mean, I don't know what Dusty Blake is working on with him, but he needs it needs more. And I don't. And again, I just don't. I understand what the Cardinals are doing, and I understand that they're patient and they're not.
Yeah.
There's not a knee jerk, but it is definitely frustrating to watch Matthew Liberatore on a regular basis.
Yeah. That last night was one of those. I was like, boy, they better pull the trigger quick on this. Just tough stuff. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I held out a lot of hope that I was like, oh, good, man, projecting him through. But, my faith's kind of dwindling. I mean, in June of, 26 to see what this goes, if this is a long term star in a rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, nothing's going to change. And I'm not really arguing that it should to some degree
Agreed.
because, I understand the idea of making sure these guys aren't looking over their shoulder, making sure these guys are taking, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 steps back. Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, it feels like. But, the idea of them trying to make progress in some form or fashion is valuable. And again, we keep like, oh wow, this season is has been great, but this is still that, like you said, that development year. And I think Hein Bloom has been pretty adamant about not paying attention to what's going on the field, like results wise, but what's going on in the development process.
Yeah, extremely true. Yeah, that would kind of that's what I agree with that wholeheartedly. And when the article came out about them being linked to some of the stars that are going to be available at the deadline, it kind of blew me away that I was like, this is, clickbait at its best, because they've given no indication that there's going to be any of this.
Right.
This is going to be about development through and through. So you hit the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest accommodation Hein Bloom might make to the fact that they're winning is not trading Dustin May.
Yes.
Or not trading. And even then, I'm not saying he wouldn't. I mean, if like we say, if Quinn Matthews looks like he's ready, if Hunter Dobbins is ready, maybe, although you still want to have that depth. But could you see that? I mean, it's possible that they could. I think and Dane Perry talked about it on his Birdie Work Substack. I think they could still trade Lars Nootbaar without, an issue. Especially if that frees up the spot for Joshua Baez, if he's really ready. There are moves they could still make, but I don't think they're going to do that whole, sell off every loose part like we thought they would be doing this time of year.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point, because one of the most intriguing things right now for me to watch, and being really, really excited about the development process, and maybe I've just drank the Kool-Aid at this point, you know what I mean? After getting back from, a few weeks ago when we were up there, and, all those things, to where you're just like, this is highly positive. They're playing like I like, with a lot of energy. It's just, everything is kind of lining up. One of the things that I want to see is the deadline approach. And we've talked about this the past 2 shows. I want to see how they handle what they feel needs to be done, while also threading the needle of keeping the fan base engaged, knowing that attendance is slightly up, getting better, and rejuvenating some of the energy that they've had, that past Cardinal teams have had. I'm excited to see how they handle that, because, I just don't, if you're in a wild card spot and you look good, I'm curious to see how they handle the situations about moving the parts in that we expected them to be moving.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, obviously they're trying to set up a basis for this team, but there's no guarantee that you're going to have another year like this anytime soon, right? I mean, you hope so. You figure you will because of the young players and how they're doing, but you don't necessarily know that. So you hate to just scrap it,
Yeah.
But Yes, also some very good opportunities out there to, I know that's got to be the hard part of this is, because if Dustin May's the third or fourth best pitcher on the market, or maybe even better, depending on who's available, um, he could bring in quite a bit, you know,
Yeah.
um, and I would hate to see him go. I think he's been a really good addition into the team, and I think he likes being in St. Louis. And I think that'll be interesting. Do the Cardinals then approach him for an extension? Because if they're not going, if he's not going to stay, then obviously you trade him, right? But
Yeah.
if you can extend him, maybe you do that. I mean, there's always the trade him and try to sign him in the offseason, but that doesn't work as well as as you would think sometimes.
Yeah, I've
Um,
always said, yeah, it very, very rarely happens.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you does it make sense when we've talked about that cup of goodwill and all those things we've always brought up before and how that was dried out. They have zero leverage here, instead of moves. We've talked about that. Well, Bloom taking over, and you can tell there's a renewed energy. I don't know if that's just due to the change in general, or if there's typical. I feel like there's definitely energy. There's a direction, and that's a lot of what Cardinals fans have asked. But I do want to know how much they'll stomach it if if they had a plan from the outset of, hey, if they perform, these are the expectations that we think we can get. If they follow through with all of those, even knowing that they can take a PR hit. I'm curious to see what amount of that they can swallow.
Yeah, because you're right, it's a fine line to walk because you don't want to burn people out, and you don't want people to not trust not trust the front office to some degree, right? I mean, granted, they've kind of been pretty clear about what they're doing.
Yes.
But it's going to be very hard to get excited about a 2027 team, if you
That
will. Um,
yes.
if you're in the back of your mind, like, but are they just going to sell off these pieces? Are we not ready yet, and we're going to sell off pieces again? I mean, how
Yeah.
are they not going to commit? Are we ready to commit to this? Um, it would be a hit. I think you could get away with it once. I just I don't know that
Well,
it's great to be in the first year that your first trade deadline if that's what you're doing.
yeah, no, it's really, really funny. As much enthusiasm as you and I have, and as much as enthusiasm as there is in the building, and that Cubs series was fun. You could tell that the home games right now are fun. Winning 2 or 3 against a San Diego team who on paper is really, really good. They're not offensive. They're offensively challenged right now, but
Oh yeah.
to go and win 2 or 3 against them, they're second place in the West. You feel pretty good about yourself where you are right now. All that to say, I'm not sure that if you truth serum the front office, they're happy with where they are right now,
Mhm.
because they're going to have a tough spot. Because, like I said, we'll go back to, hey, this is the plan. If they perform how we want, this is the risk we take. Our evaluation crew thinks that this is where they can be, and these are potentially the pieces that we could bring back. If you stick with that plan, and it hurts the team next year, and you fall flat in 27, that could be a really, really ugly situation.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
you're right.
you talk about that cup of goodwill in St. Louis, that would be dried out, and then you would unfortunately it'd be calling for heads if
Yeah.
next year does not achieve, or worse, if next year's team is only as good as this year's team, that could be a problem.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you gotta be
You
willing to
better,
take that hit
yeah, you
because
better
and
trust your evaluators.
yeah, and be sure that 2028 or 2029 is gonna be a team, and then going forward, right? I mean, you can't just have a 2028 team that makes the playoffs. You have to have a
Hmm.
28 team that goes deep, or you have to have a 28 team that makes playoff, a 29 team that makes playoff, and a 30 team that makes playoff, and all these different things. So I don't know. I think I don't know that Heimblum is going to shy away from anything like that. If he thinks a deal that needs to be made,
Yeah.
he's gonna try to get it made. Also, though, I mean, the DeWitts are a little bit more in charge, right? I mean, if they don't, if he's got to deal with Dustin May, but they don't want to make it, then are they can step in if they want to.
Yeah.
I don't know how often that happens with them. They're pretty good about turning things over to the front office and letting it work. But they had a really good relationship with Mosaic, and I'm sure they have a nice one with Bloom, but it just doesn't have the 20 plus years of development like the one with Mo did. So could they decide that they're going to override something or say, hey, I understand your plan, but we can't do this from a marketing standpoint. I don't know if they would do that or not, but it's always a possibility, right? And I don't know. Yeah, and the next one's gonna be fast. And again, we're talking about this, and you look at last year's team, and last year's team was at this time last year we were talking about adding to this team, and then by when July came around, they lost like 10 or 12 and fell out of it, and they were selling at the deadline. And while I have some confidence in this team, they could easily start sliding and be more on the fringes of the wild card than 4 or 5 games up, whatever they are now. And then it becomes okay, yeah, it makes more sense to sell, or you can argue that a lot better. So a lot of things can change in a month.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, it seemed like a little 2-week run right before the break last year changed everything. And yeah, I mean and honestly, I'll be completely frank on this. I felt like the Twins series was a trap series. As you head back home, you have San Diego looming, you have Kansas City looming. You're running into that first half. You're running into that first half window that a lot of the guys that haven't played a full minor league season may be hitting a wall, running up into the break. Get an off day, go reset, repeat. Like the Saturday off day, as preposterous as it is kind of a cool segue right now because I feel like the Cardinals need it because they had that stretch of a week or so ago to where they were playing every day.
Right.
All that being said, the Twins series loss was worrisome. The fact that you couldn't sweep San Diego, which would have been big, but I completely understand it. I almost feel like you have to win this Kansas City series for the momentum aspect of it. But every one of the losses that are like this are concerning to me because I do wonder when that next shoe is going to fall. And I hate that feeling, but I think that's just kind of been the way that it has been the last few years. So I'm hoping that it's one of those that they can win this series, come out, look at it home next week, and just kind of stay the course.
Yeah, and it really is kind of important to do that, and because they come home, they get 4 with the Diamondbacks, an Diamondback team that they should be competitive. They should be, but is not overwhelmingly great. Obviously, they're 3rd or 4th in the division, but they're also still playing well. And you get the emotional reunion with Nolan Arenado too.
Yeah.
Then you get 3 with the Marlins, who have been playing, again, somewhat in the range of the Cardinals. A series that the Cardinals can win, but it's not necessarily a slam dunk. But then you turn the calendar, last of June, 1st of July, you got 3 with the Braves, 3 with the Cubs in Wrigley, 5 with the Brewers in Busch, 3 with the Braves in Busch before the All-Star break. That is, besides the fact that you're playing 13, 14 games with no days off, a doubleheader in there. Those are all really, really strong teams. I mean, the Cubs are the Cubs, and they're not, they're behind the Cardinals in the standings, but we know what that's
it's
like.
still
And
that
you go to
series.
Wrigley,
Exactly.
that's a hard series. It's going to be hard. And then to play the Braves, who are just kind of running away with things, and then the Brewers, who we know how bad they are, and in a 5-game series, you're facing Mizorowski at least. He's in there somewhere. I don't know where. You've got to get the wins while you can because that stretch going into the All-Star break is going to be rough. And like we say, that could be the difference between, if they come in and even if they go 7-7 in that time period, you feel okay, right? And then you probably But if they go less than 500 in that span, that may make it a lot easier for them to start, thinking about selling.
Yeah, exactly. You got to bank some of these series. I agree, and I feel like the Cardinals have been great about series wins this year.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you knew San Diego was going to break free. That San Diego has too good of a lineup to be in the situation that they are. It's really really baffling to me. But yeah, you kind of worried about that, but you can't come out and lay an egg in a series like this against Kansas City. And I understand it's a rivalry situation, one of those. But yeah, it is concerning to me that you could run into after playing so well for the better half of June to not finish June on a high note, and that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and again, David, my co-host at Gateway,
Sure.
pointed out that the Cardinals have a pretty rough record in getaway games this year. And I
It felt
don't,
like they never win Sunday games.
yeah, we know that we record on Sundays a lot of times. We
Yeah.
always seem to be recording after a loss, but also it always felt like, and I haven't done the numbers, David may have, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it feels like a lot of times where they've won the first two games of a series, especially like that Padres series, two night games, and then you got that day game that ends the series. It just never feels like they're able to finish off the sweep. They've done it a couple of times. They did it with the Reds, earlier in the month. But just that Mets series, and they wound up winning the first two, losing the afternoon game that ended it, and then they turned around and lost to the Twins. It's kind of the same. You're looking at the same thing right there. You lost to the Padres, and you lose the first game to the Royals, and hopefully this Royal series goes. They can take both these next two games instead of like the Twins game losing the Sunday game as well. Um, but it does feel like that they can't quite. Even though, I mean, Ollie's good about putting out a regular lineup in those games, right? A lot of times it would be, they keep putting that gateway lineup out there, and that they can. He's puts the regulars out there. They just don't seem to, whether it's a day game after night game type of thing or what. It just doesn't seem to be able to carry that kind of momentum over for a longer period of time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the ability to close it out. No, I agree.
Mhm.
It's um I, I mean, some of that's baseball, but then some of it I think is a young team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought the same thing. I was like, they hardly ever win on Sundays, and I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm too lazy to look it up, but it always seems like that. You're just thinking, they can never get away to do this, and then can never close out a series. They don't sweep anybody either, and I don't know, it's strange.
Yeah, I'm just doing it real quick. Right now, I've got it 2-4, 2-5, 3-5, 3-6, 4-6 on Sundays. 5-6 because the beginning of the year looks like. I mean, 4-7. Sorry, if I did that right, which is off the top of my head, probably miss up something. But yeah, and some of those, they had, some of those are probably salvaging a game. I think there's like one of those Sundays they were salvaging.
Yeah,
But yeah, they beat the Dodgers in for two games and lost the third one. You know, you you beat the Royals in the two games and lost the third one. Um, it's just there's a number of those, and I think you're right. As you pointed out, there is something about it being a young team that probably plays a little bit into this. Just well, I don't know exactly what it is. Just not the experience of being able to know how to go out there and play a third game on a day game after night games, or that adjustment that they need to make. I don't know what it is, and hopefully that's just one of those things that comes with age and experience. And next year we're not talking about that.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, this bit of advice. I wouldn't say advice. I talked to a buddy of mine. Do you remember Mark Little? That was an outfielder in the Cardinals organization in the
Hmm.
'80s and '90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to him at one point. He sold medical supplies too. Great guy. Got to know him pretty well, and I'd always ask him questions like this. Like, hey, what would you do in this situation? And I said this one. I said, if you were a betting man, how much would you bet on the team going for the sweep or the team avoiding the sweep? And he said, all in on the team avoiding it. He goes, teams make that a factor to always avoid the sweep. And I put a lot of that into the avoiding the sweep and the getaway situation, that a lot of the veterans guys are out like, we're not losing this one. And you get just a little uptick of enthusiasm on those games. And that's always kind of resounded with me, especially in a situation like this on a young team that maybe the Cardinals don't fully grasp that concept yet because they don't have the long tenure guy yet.
That may be part of it too. They've also had a chance a couple of times to break a sweep, and they've done it.
Yeah.
It is difficult. I think that you're right. There is that motivation to get, make sure you don't. And I think that probably plays more into it on a team that, when you're fairly competitive, right? I mean, or maybe the team that's lost the first two is really better than the team that has won the first two. Because the Cardinals swept the Reds, but the Reds are not necessarily that good, right? I mean, so that's not as surprising that they would be better than them in 3 games. But baseball is also that way, right? I mean,
Yes.
the best teams, only win, 2 of 3. I mean, nobody wins 2 of 3 for a whole season.
Yeah,
So,
I completely agree. That's just kind of how the game works, and that's why it's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Playing every day.
It is. So we've seen some. It's been part of the fun of this team, I guess, has been the fact that we have gotten a chance to see young players get a chance to make their debut. We saw it last night with Max Rajic, who probably had one of the rougher of debuts lately. He gave up some, but he got a strikeout. He pitched an inning, a third inning, 2/3. I don't remember exactly what it was. Gave up a home run to Salvador Perez, but who hasn't? I think he looked pretty good. I think there's a decent chance he goes back down today because he wound up, because the bullpen got so taxed. But did you see anything that was really interesting out of him?
Nothing noteworthy. It's I was glad to see him get the debut. You always hate the debut in that type situation, but it's still a debut, and they showed the family that made it. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of wonder about the machine, about who's going to come up and who's going to come down. Then you have the Saturday off day, which is actually going to add some, and I guess it'd be any off day. It doesn't necessarily have to be the right. Saturday off day that kind of adds to that a little bit. But yeah, nothing noteworthy. I mean, and if you want complete truth, after I had the game on, don't get me wrong, but I was working on my computer after they didn't get out of that bases loaded situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? I thought, well, you find a gap here, things get interesting. After that, there was even, they didn't make any position changes right away, but it happened fairly quickly after that, type deal. So, yeah, my checkout factor was really high last night after I had built up so much emotion to go into the game, since it was an afternoon college game, that I was kind of done with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And then, but the thing was, even last night, even down 7-2, even down late in the game.
I know where you're going with this. I agree.
Yeah, they had bases loaded at one point in time, which, I mean, granted, a grand slam doesn't even, you're still down, but they had opportunities to at least, cut into it, make it more of an interesting game.
Yeah, well,
and they
go ahead,
and at least, well, and I mean, obviously they didn't come through in a lot of those times, but a lot of those times they hit the ball hard and just right at somebody.
Yeah, and think about this. This was literally a couch conversation I had with Amber last night. I said, here we go. The bases are loaded. I'm intrigued. I said, and it's Walker, Velasquez, and Burt and Burley. And you're thinking, we wouldn't have said this last year. You know what I mean? You'd have had the hard eye roll. You're like, oh, here we go. Type deal. But now you're like, hey, one of these three can find a gap real easy. It doesn't always work out, but still, there's intrigue there, because you're thinking this could get real interesting real quick. Yep. Even when it was 7-3, and they're there with them loaded, and I was thinking, I could see Burley finding something right here, and then it gets real interesting. And did happen. That's kind of the game, but that just kind of shows how the mindset has changed within a year.
Yeah, they just still got to figure out, a little bit more consistency. I mean, if you can. And I mean, there's an argument that, hitting with runners in scoring position isn't any different than hitting with runners not in scoring position, which is probably true. But
I don't buy that. But yeah.
Well, I understand. But Joe Sheehan has done some significant statistical work. It kind of looks like there's really, but anyway, whatever the case may be, they do need to get some hits to fall, if nothing else, in those situations. I've had some struggles with that this
Yeah.
year, and but like I said last night, I'd be sitting there and I'd be watching it, and they hit the ball, in a situation. I'm like, oh, okay, that's gonna, at least it's gonna die, it's gonna dry, and they'd either hit it too hard or whatever, or
Yeah.
they make a good, good running catch, and their outfield was really strong last night, the Royals. So if one of those balls gets down, things change maybe. But it didn't. And again, when you're down 5 runs in the second inning, it's hard to argue that, you got robbed or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed. And it's, but you're right. I mean, that did add to the intrigue that you're thinking, okay, well, something can happen here.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It makes so much difference than the last couple of years. Because the last couple of years, if they were down 2 or 3-0, you were like, I don't know. I don't know if they're
Exactly.
coming back. Even if this, they give up 2 runs in the first inning, we'd be like, maybe not be this, may not be our night, that kind of thing. And you're not like that as much. I mean, granted, they don't give up runs as early as they used to some degree, except for last night, obviously. But it just feels this team definitely has the ability to put things together. And they're going to go through spurts where they don't, and I don't know. I don't know what it is, because I don't think that all the offensive problems of last year were, on Nolan Arenado or Wilson Contreras or,
Mhm.
or Brendan Donovan or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it just means that these guys click better. I don't know if they've just had some better luck. They've had better sequencing this year. Or the fact that it's a younger, some of these guys are younger and really are up there trying to make a name for themselves. That gives them a little bit more of a focus. I don't know what it is, but it's obviously been much more impressive than it was last year.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like there was maybe a chip on the shoulder a little bit this year. I think that stuff makes a difference. I think there was a refocus. I think that the coaches have done a great job on that. There's a lot of simplification and things like that have gone into it. And you know, I'm just confident we're still going to be having this conversation in a month where last year I don't know if I would have thought that. I mean, I kind of thought, well, after the All-Star game, let's see what you get that week back where you don't play very well and you're buried at that point. Then you're like, okay, well, pieces are moving. Let's just see what they get back. And that's the intrigue. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case this year. I think that they're going to stick around for a little while and maybe as far as the pitching will take them. But offensively, I just think that they've turned the corner enough to where I'm like, well, this is intriguing to watch them.
Yeah, it's been fun. And before I want to give, and this may be the only Cardinal podcast that is going to do this. I want to give Justin Brule a little bit of credit. He's had rough stretches. He's been better of late. He really has. But I want to tell you, last night he went 2 2/3, and you could tell by the end of it he was worn out, but he was still out there getting those outs and saving the bullpen. He gave up 2 runs, but one of them was unearned. Um, again, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't great. You're finishing up again, but it saved a bullpen. And I don't think I've ever seen a guy, really look like he's giving everything he's got, because he's not a guy. I mean, 2.2's got to be like one of his longest stretches, if not the longest one of the year. I know he's done a couple of 2-inning ones as of late. They've pushed him out, but he just, he threw. He may have thrown more pitches than Matthew Liberatore did. I don't know. Liberatore threw 48, Brule threw 39, so it was pretty close.
Yeah.
And yeah, so anyway, again, I think we give those middle relievers especially, we either give them a lot of grief or we ignore them. And I thought from last night, he did a heck of a job, and he won't be seen till sometime in the Arizona series, I'm sure now, which is a wrinkle for the Cardinals, being one of the main lefties. But
Yeah.
he did what he could do, and that was cool.
Yeah, that's it. It is always awesome to see those pickup games or those guys that situation where understated, no one's going to notice, but in what could potentially be a taxed bullpen, that's a huge turnaround.
Yeah.
Considering that you play today, then you're kind of begging for the off day between series and the reset refresh. So you hope for a greavy 5 to 6 innings a night, which has typically been okay.
Yeah.
And then you could be all right, but that's kind of a bullpen saver that may have cost him his job for a little while, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And again, the bullpen shouldn't be overly taxed anyway. This has been a heck of a week for starting pitching. Dustin May, we've talked about, we referenced it a little bit, but the 9 inning 1-hit game that he threw. Then, for Andre Palante to come out the next day and throw 7
Yeah.
innings of
Yeah.
ball that was really good. I mean, he went, I don't think the Padres had a hit until the 5th inning, or maybe the 6th against
I
him.
think it's the 6th.
Yeah. And even, Leahy didn't, he went 6. So the bullpen didn't get used too much in the San Diego series, which helps. Um, that Dustin May game, if you had, I assume you had a chance
Man.
to watch that.
Every pitch. Yep.
I mean, again, Sonny Gray had a game like this last year. Of course, it was also on Apple TV, so I don't know how many people saw it last year. But I mean, that was really impressive. And I gotta say, I really thought he might get that no-hitter. And until, even the perfect game could have been ruined. It would have been interesting. And one of these days, this is going to happen. But he had the perfect game going against Fernando Tatis. And I think the 2-2 or the 3-1 pitch was called a strike. If Tatis had reviewed it, it would have been a ball, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Can you imagine losing a perfect game on an ABS challenge?
Oh man. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it was nuts. Yeah.
But anyway,
I was like, boy, he's nasty. I mean, after the first 2 innings, I was like, he is dominating people with that sweeper. And I was thinking, man, this lineup is really, really rough, but he was just dominating. But every time it would roll around, Tatis and Machado just are guys, and I'm a big Jackson Merrill guy too, to where I'm thinking one of them are going to hurt him. It's coming, type of situation. There's going to be something in the gap. They're going to do it loud, one of those things. And it just never happened. And I'm thinking, boy, this is nice. And then the next thing you know, you're like, he's going to Maddox this.
Yeah.
He's going to do it in less than 100 pitches. I was like, this is crazy. So when he started with 93 in the 9th, I'm thinking, I can only hope for a quick out here because that's what I want to see more than anything. But no, it's one of those two to where he is an easy guy to root for due to all the injuries and just the weird, peculiar injuries that he's had. To do that and to hear his post game and all kinds of stuff, you're just like, there's a lot of genuine joy in that. And that always makes you feel better. But boy, it was a dominant start. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was. And then they got a chance to talk to him the next night on the broadcast. And it was a pretty good interview. I have not heard a lot from Dustin May, over the time he's been in St. Louis, but it was really cool to listen to him. He's a pretty, I don't want to say stoic guy, but he seemed to, he's thoughtful, I guess is probably the best way to put it. And so again, I would hate for the Cardinals to trade him. I would hate for the Cardinals. I would be open to the Cardinals at a good price, obviously, going for a couple-year extension and keeping him around for a while, because I think a guy like May, where if he's got his stuff, which he has had pretty much all year, if he's figured it out, could be huge for this rotation that is going to be very young and very, as people start taking Matthew Liberatore's spot and Kyle Leahy's spot and things of that nature over the next couple of years, could probably use that veteran mentor type. Because we know how much that has, how much Chris Carpenter and Adam Wainwright and all those have had an impact on the staffs that they were on.
Yeah.
To have a guy like Dustin May stick around could make a significant difference.
Sure, and those are the things that you hope to see, and I want to hear the explanation about bringing them on, or why you move them, or one of those things. And maybe the proof's in the pudding if they do move them and what they bring back. But yeah, I do want to, like, that kind of goes back to the culture questions we were asking during the Q&A. Like, when you reach these guys that are 80 score culture, how much is it worthy to keep them around, especially in a situation when you're trying to build what you have now? So I don't know. It's that leads me. I'm super excited about the deadline because I want to see what messaging they send.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And before the deadline, of course, there's the draft, which may impact them a bit. But
Yeah,
if, they're going to get a significant number of new people into this organization through the draft, then possibly, by the end of July or August 3rd, I guess, technically, since the draft deadline's then, um, there could be quite an influx of a talent that a minor league system that's already got a whole lot of it could get a whole lot more, and that could be fun. It may not help a whole lot for this year, but it could be fun for the future.
yeah, yeah. And it's one of those that's even that dividing line of they're in it this year, and I understand that a large majority is like, hey, this is for the better, that they're making a move now. Of how much pushback they get of everybody that's like, hey, I think that you need to better the team now than better the team in the future, because I think that kind of conversation is probably going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, we will see. Before we wrap it up today, though, I want to get a little bit off of the Cardinals and see what your thoughts are. Yesterday, um, MLB put out their proposal or part of their proposals to the MLB EPA about amateurs, basically. And their proposal was no more high school
Yeah,
draft. That you'd have to be 20 to make it into the major league draft. That there would only be 12 rounds. And that there would be hard slots. You couldn't, you had to basically sound like you had to pay that slot, not you couldn't go over or under. You wouldn't have a pool. What were you thinking? Because I mean, to some degree, that feels like they're trying to turn college into the minor leagues,
yeah.
into some of the development. What were we thinking there?
I I'm so glad you asked this, because no, the very first, when the news broke yesterday, and I read two or three. There wasn't a full blown article yet about it. It was just the proposals, and everybody was detailing what it was. I got excited because I thought they are completely, completely going on the. They're completely going on the building on the momentum of the college baseball playoffs and college World Series right now. And it kind of goes back to what you and I have talked about, is this is the first time in recent memory where college is turning into a proving ground for Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're seeing guys that are making the NBA and NFL type turn, where they're making a difference for a big league club within a year to two, instead of the 5 and 6 years that they used to utilize in minor league baseball for these guys to come along. I feel like this is the closest we've ever been of bridging that gap between college baseball and Major League Baseball, and making the notable names in college baseball notable in the draft and then in the big leagues right away, which led me to some excitement. I thought, okay, I feel like they benefited by cutting the minor leagues the past few years ago, which I hated because I hated the cutting of the jobs, but it clearly made college baseball better.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side of that, I do wonder now, with the draft becoming international, if now, I have no better term than to use this, that the exploitation of the Latin players is going to start at 16, where the American born players and everything starts after college now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I say that as exploitation in a negative term. And I did kind of sleep on it, and I don't know if I've had any clarity on that, because I liked the idea when I read it, but now I'm like, okay, then what benefit does this international draft have if it's not going to dictate what happens in the Latin countries? And so I really don't know. I'm kind of stuck in the middle on this one, of being selfish and want to see college baseball get better, and hope that these teams become a proving ground. I don't like that the NIL money is now going to kind of help owners not pay signing bonus money, because I just think name, image, likeness money is led college athletics down a bad path a little bit. From a fan standpoint, because the roster's changed so much, you don't buy in and know that you have 4 years of a guy anymore. And, but that's 1990s thinking. But yeah, that's a little bit of a concern of mine. I feel like any proposal right now is strictly a proposal, and to try to gain wins in what's going to be the bigger battle of none of these things may come to fruition when they finally come to an agreement, whether that's before we go on strike / lockout, or 10 years after, when they finally decide to get out of their own way. I don't know. So on the outset, I like the proposal. Digging deeper, I don't know if I love the proposal, but it's still yet, I think the word proposal is probably the most dominant factor in that.
Yeah, I'm sure that it is. I'm sure it's one of those things that's kind of like, oh, okay, we're going to put this out here and then we'll drop it if they'll give us a cap or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not quite like that, but it's something. These are all extremes right now. Our fan council had a meeting with with the MLB this week, and they outlined what kind of a little bit of their approach on the CBA and stuff like that, and that's the same type of thing, right? I mean, they're asking for salary caps and floors and all this stuff, and there's a lot of that's probably not going to happen. I don't know, maybe probably overstating it. I've in the past I would say it would never happen, but all that being said, part of me is I'm not real big on sending a kid to college if he doesn't want to go to college.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
Sure, they're probably going on scholarship and all that, but if an 18-year-old is good enough, and I mean, look, we're seeing Connor Griffin at 19 playing in the major leagues, right?
Yeah,
I mean, rare cases, but if an 18 or 19-year-old is able to get a few $1 million there, I mean, yeah, maybe they would have gotten that at college with NIL, but also, if they get hurt at college, they're done. I mean, I don't know. I think that if they're willing to, I mean, it could be like, didn't it used to be like, if you went to college, you couldn't go back in the draft until you were a junior.
Yes, well, yes, you're right. In baseball, it was after your sophomore year, and then in football, it's after your junior year.
Yeah, so maybe it's something like that, where if you're good enough to go to the pros right out of high school, go for it. If not, you've got to at least commit a couple of years to college. That sure. Okay. I get that. I didn't like the fact that they cut the rounds. I mean, they cut it to 20 already. 12 feels like you're just not going to be able to add enough players into your system, right? And it's just going to drop the quality overall, I think. And I'm not big, I don't know. The hard slot thing, I don't know. I've never been huge on the pool either, but I guess it has worked out pretty well. I just think that, and again, this is one of the things that Joe Sheehan has talked about. The window for baseball, I think we think about players playing till they're 37, 38, 40. Yeah. Right now, if you look at the number of at-bats being taken, it's the cutoff is really, there's a sharp drop off after like 32. So if you're getting people that are, you're making them stay in college, 20, 21, 22 before they get drafted, it's like JJ Weatherholt, right? JJ Weatherholt's 24, right? Isn't that right? Am I right? I feel like I'm right.
Post college would make sense.
Yeah, he's like 24 now. He's not going to be a free agent under the current rules until he's 30 or 31. And I think JJ Weatherholt's the kind of guy that would last longer, but people aren't going to necessarily, we've seen that over the last bit, right? We've seen those, those players that if they're not, superstars, they have real trouble finding a job in those middle range because these younger players coming up. I just think that it's another way to keep salaries down. And I think it also, when you point out how many players, are Hall of Famers because a lot of those Hall of Famers got drafted at 18 or 19 or something like that, and I think it allows you for that longer career, and to be more long. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there are benefits to it, like you said, getting a chance to really develop at college. But then again, with NIL, I mean, if a guy goes to this college for 1 year and that college for another year, when he gets to the major league team that he gets drafted for, they may have to really kind of start from scratch, right? Because depending on what he's learned.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what we're seeing, I think, a little bit with Liam Doyle, right? He went to 2 or 3 different schools, and now I think the Cardinals are, kind of trying to shape him into what the kind of player that they think he should be, and he's had some struggles. I mean, I think we thought Liam Doyle would be kind of knocking on the door maybe by now, and now it looks like, next year at best, right?
Yes, I mean that seems like the biggest up and downs. I mean, it seems like the other
Mhm.
Tennessee pitcher may have surpassed him a little bit,
Yeah.
and the yeah, that's interesting you say that some of the development doesn't necessarily align with the organization, which
Mhm.
puts it back on the evaluators. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like any move that's made on either side is either about hey, um, on the union side that hey we need to maximize the value, whether it
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
paying these guys quicker or
Yep.
the ownership side that's basically a salary suppression.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean and
Yep.
it's stuff that those are the underlying things that sometimes out of enthusiasm I fail to see.
Well, and I mean, but I get it. I mean, you're coming at it a totally different way too. I mean, you've seen what college can do for these guys, and how much it has developed. And it is, I mean, there is that idea. I grant you that it would help college players, and it's got to help some, right? That people are okay. We're drafting these guys. We know their names because people are paying attention to college baseball more, but also because they're making it to the majors faster. JJ Weatherholt already, and probably chance of rookie of the year, and he was drafted what, less than 2 years ago. So I mean, they're not these stars of college baseball are not spending 4 or 5 years in the minors anymore.
Yes.
Which is good for baseball good for college baseball because people then will pay attention a little bit more. So, but yeah, we'll just have. I mean, again, it's everything that's thrown out there right now is all about things, and again, that's one of those things where if you changed how you did, if it was a 4-year initial contract from rookie to 4 years, and then they became free agents, that changes things, right? I mean, financially, even if you did have that kind of they started later, if they could get to free agency earlier, then they might have a chance to make more money. Now that depends on other issues as well, but something like that might be a negotiating point. We'll just have to see.
Yeah. The We're gonna probably hear a lot or see a ton of these posts and information drops as we get closer to what seems to be an inevitable work stoppage.
Yeah, I will say, and you take it for all that it's worth, which may not be anything, but in our Zoom meeting this week with MLB, I think there was at least a question asked about all this, about games being missed and all that, and they said they don't worry about that right now. I mean, you're really
Yeah,
boiled down to, um, again, I think there's a lot of talk, and I don't think there's really a whole lot of things that will start to move until after the December 1st lockout happens. There's really not any motivation for anybody to concede anything between now and then.
yeah,
So hopefully, they can find their way, and we're not missing any games next year. But again, if the owners stay hard on that cap, I I don't know if I think the union has still got enough in them, and especially now that they're led by somebody that's not a former player but an actual
yeah,
lawyer. I think that could be. I mean, you remember '94? That was a big thing.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And it was, I mean, there's a lot of things I remember leading up to it when ABC started bringing more games up to draw interest to see if,
Mhm.
it was, I don't know. It was just extremely strange. And I hope we just don't get to that point.
Yeah, hopefully it does sound like in '94 the players went on strike in August because they knew they were going to get locked out in the winter.
Yeah.
They're not doing that. Hasn't even been discussed They haven't had a strike in forever. It's always been lockouts. So, I think that's at least a step maybe, that they don't feel like they need the leverage. Either that or they've realized that it didn't work last time, so not going to try it again this time. Because if you go on strike, you lose a lot of the public relations stuff. Even when the people get locked out, a lot of times people are blaming the players instead of the owners. But if you go on strike, they definitely do.
100%. I've always felt that way. It's always, I say this all the time, and I'm preaching to the choir on this one. You only see the player salary. You never see what the owner's making.
Right.
And that's why I've always thought it was unfair. You're just like, I just can't understand these guys that are making this kind of money decide not to play. And, being the union guy that I am, I said, well, there's a flip side to this. You don't know what the other guy's making.
Right. He's making enough to pay all these guys. So
100%. And that's not the only player on the team.
No, there's that. And I think that's going to be very interesting because if you're going to do this right, and I don't know what other sports do, honestly, but I feel like if you're going to do this right, you have to open the books and say, how much are you making on baseball? If you're going to have a cap that's based on revenues, right?
Yeah.
Now, if they the cap is based on TV revenues, they don't have to do that. But I don't think that's the case. It's going to be revenues. It's going to be what are you bringing in in the tickets? What are you selling merchandise? All this stuff. And so, in theory, we should be able to see what the St. Louis Cardinals are making and spending, because they're going to, or at least baseball in general, I guess. But I would think everybody would be able to split that out. Now, maybe that's not the way it works, but to me, it feels like if you're going to set a cap, you've got to, put out there, at least to the Players Association, and in theory, the Players Association has no reason to keep that quiet. What, and not just oh yeah, we made this. No, you have to actually show, audited financial statements or whatever the case may be that show what you made. And even then, I've read about this in the past, it's probably a little bit less of it now, but back in the old days, when the Cubs were on WGN, right? Well, WGN just needed the Cubs program, so they didn't pay the Cubs all that much, when there's two entities owned by the same people, they're not necessarily an arm's length transaction, and that could skew a lot of things. So, we will see how that goes. I really hope there's not a cap for the fact that I don't want to deal with all the rules with a cap, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about I listen to the NBA. I pick it up here and there. I don't have any idea to follow it, but and they're talking about, this kind of exemption and this kind of apron, and they can do this and they can do that. And I'm like, I don't want to sit and calculate, what, that's not what I want to do with this.
Well, and then selfishly, I understand we're probably at a point where something needs to happen as far as, not pricing out the normal person from going to these events. You know what I mean? I completely understand. I completely understand where we're coming from. And, it's just tough to take a family now. And at a point where participation and everything are pivotal terms as far as the growth of any sport or any extracurricular activity, you just can't price out the fans in these things that's Americana. Selfishly, I never want to hear cap involved with Major League Baseball, because back to this, being the union background that I have, I just never want to see it happen. But I do feel like needs to be some kind of safeguards to where, I don't drink, but an $18 beer is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I agree. But I just wonder, I don't know how much that's tied to player salaries, if you will. I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know how much, how much of this is, they're doing this.
Yeah. Back to the entire point. Yeah. That's, the books need to be open. You would know better than anybody. That's, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, anyway, hopefully we won't have to talk a lot about that until the off season. And we'll have a lot more interesting Cardinal things to talk about as we go forward. The Cardinals, like we said, have that home, after they get done with the Royals this weekend, have that homestand with Arizona and Miami coming up. should be a big week for that. And Alan and I will be back next week to talk about it. So until then, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
0-1 to Pujols. In the air, left field, and Pujols has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic, towering 3-run home run. Stunned and